I get classified as this entrepreneur. I don't think I've ever really invented anything new. I take things that exist and ideally get them to a better level. That's one of my purpose, causes, and passions for myself and for others.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Book Leads Impactful Books for Life and Leadership. I'm your series host and leadership performance coach, John Jaramillo. This podcast series is about getting to the books that have impacted the lives of the people in my growing network. So these are great leads I'll be having conversations with. I always say interviewing, but having conversations with to get to those books that have made the most impact on who they are, their life, their work, whether they're the author of the book we're covering or not. And my guest today is Scott Abbott. And Scott likes to think of himself as an architect, builder, and custodian of prosperous companies' leadership and growth. He has 35 plus years of credentialed experience and expertise launching, operating, buying, and selling great companies. Along the way, Scott has worked with hundreds of startups, small, midsize, and Fortune 1000 companies. He has raised over $35 million in venture capital with several successful exits and some not so successful. In total, Scott has led teams and organizations that generated billions in sales, serviced thousands of clients, and hired hundreds of employees. He's a finalist for the Ernst & Young Technology Entrepreneur of the Year Award, a former entrepreneur in residence at Indiana University Kelley School of Business, Inc. 5000 winner, Fast Company executive board member, hosts a top-rated podcast, and is the author of 4 best-selling books, including BOS-UP, BOS-UP Moments, the Co+Factor, and Level Up to Professional. For the record, Scott likes to emphasize that he's also learned a lot through a truckload of failures and mistakes. As for his current professions and passions, after reading all that, now it's like, as for his current stuff, just shows you that history of accomplishments and roles. He has the joy and privilege of being the founder and CEO of BOS-UP, Strategos, and Phase 4 Investments. He's also a business and executive coach, angel investor, and board member. Most of all, Scott loves helping good and caring people, along with team-centric organizations, effectively learn, implement, and leverage the essential concepts, tools, and disciplines for exceptional leadership, management, teamwork, and accountability in business, work, and life. Scott, thank you so much for joining me.
John, I'm exhausted hearing all of that already, but I appreciate you sharing that and having me on the show today and for doing the show in the first place. Thank you.
Absolutely. Like I said, when I was reading it, when it got to the point where it said, as for his current professions and passions, that just shows you how much existed before that. So I can't wait to dive in.
Good to me, man. I'm blessed and privileged. I think it says 35 years, but it's now over 40. So that could use maybe a little update, but It's been a good ride, man. As they say, the destination is the journey. So it's been good.
Yeah, I'm learning that more and more as I go. It's a slow lesson to pick up and really understand, but the destination is the journey is just so powerful. So I want, based on the bio, everything I shared, I want people to get a sense of what your day-to-day looks like. So obviously there's a lot of great information in here, but who are you today? In all of that information that I provided, your background, what does your day-to-day look like so that people can understand who's sharing their book with us?
Yeah, so I thanks for that. Great question. I'm an advocate for humanization and systemization, and they really have to go together today because of AI and automation and socioeconomics and, let's be frank, the dynamics of the world today. There's that wonderful baseball movie with Kevin Costner that, they're dealing with a lot of shit, and the manager comes out and says, hey, let's compartmentalize this and, do this, do that. Also a big fan of, you said Indiana University this year. You may have heard we won the national championship and went 60-0 thanks to Curt Cignetti. And if you listen to any of his talks, he's all about systemization and standards and protocol and some of this old fashioned, rigor, but in a modern era, respecting, empathy and authenticity and inclusiveness and all that good stuff. So I try to.
Yeah, what do you think when you say that the coach went to like this old fashioned rigor and systems?
Yeah.
Where do you think it was before where kind of sports kind of veered off from that old fashioned thinking?
Yeah, well, I think what happens is, and you get these terms like player coach, and I think Cignetti thinks of himself as a CEO more than a coach because he's surrounded himself with other great coaches. And so he's got a system. he believes in process and protocol, but I think while his body language might not smile a lot if you see him on the sidelines, right? He's smiling inside, man, because
Yeah.
good performance, productivity, alignment, healthy accountability. He's into that, and that's where I spend my life today. The old cliche, if I only knew then what I know now. Well, honestly, John, if I did, I wouldn't be here. I'd be a billionaire on an island somewhere. So I've made a lot of mistakes. The
Yeah.
old line, if I knew then, well, you can't change the past, let alone perfect it. So I spend a lot of my life today trying to help others with, my, hindsight that now becomes their insight to create foresight. And so I live my life in 3/3. 1/3 is learning. As a teacher, a facilitator, a coach, an investor myself, I'm an advocate for lifelong growth and learning. So I literally have a very specific way that I learn, especially with AI now, how it helps me to just compile and coordinate and get the type of inputs and outputs I want. Second is I have a couple of organizations I'm helping to lead. BOS-UP, Coaching Solution Academy, Strategos, Phase 4 Investments. And again, thanks to systemization, automation, AI, I'm able to do things that used to take me 40 hours, I could do now in about 15, on average. And
Yeah.
third, back to the journey and destination, I've gotten older. So I really am focused on lifelong well-being. I do a lot around just being the best version of myself so I can be there for other people, everything from health and holistics and meditation and prayer. I know some will say that's selfish. I think it's actually selfless. I say this to a lot of owners who tell me they can't be there for themselves because they're there for other people. And that's flawed thinking, right, man? If you get
Yeah.
sick or hurt or you throw out a hip when you shouldn't and you didn't have to, that's actually selfish. So take care of yourself, especially if you're in a leadership position. So you ask what my days, my weeks, my life is. It's kind of those 3/3, and because I'm systemized, it actually liberates me to be more present with my family, my friends, my neighbors. So counterintuitive to a lot of people, better discipline and systemization liberates you to actually be more
Yeah.
present and better for yourself and those around you.
Absolutely. Scott, following up on some of the things you said, in general, not specifically, but in general, what areas have you used AI? What does it look like if you can give a couple examples where you say things that used to take you tens of hours now only take you a certain number of hours or 40 hours versus 15 hours now, whatever it may be. Can you give a couple examples of how you've gotten it to work for you?
Across the board, man. Across the board, business, work, and life. In fact, my latest book, BOS-UP Moments, I've got 40 moments in here to help leaders be better versions of themselves. Think about this as EQ, right? The individual, and my other BOS-UP books about the strategy, the mechanics, the engineering to build, run, and scale a great company. At the end of every 40 moments are 5 prompts. Prompts, as we know, are big in AI, but they're questions. And so on a journaling, this could be in your nightstand, your kitchen table, or your boardroom. So individuals trying to get comfortable with AI, what I suggest to them is pen and paper, write it down. But when you're looking for that additional insight, coaching, mentorship, awareness, right? And we all know that
Yeah.
AI can get a little hallucinogenic. There's ways to tell it to stop doing that, by the way. But use it just as this co-pilot, this ally, this affordable, effective, accessible way to help you just get more comfortable with both the opportunities and the challenges. And then in business, yeah, we use it across the board. We use it to just make our processes more efficient and validated. We use it to code, obviously, so we're able to engineer. I've been in tech for 40 years, so the engineering side of it. And then last but not least, just the power that it does for our solution, our framework. We suggest you create what are called rocks. Stephen Covey basically created the concept, your 90-day goals and priorities. Those tie into key performance indicators. Those then attach to OKRs. And so using AI literally across the board, but beware everybody. I caution that you've always got to own the inputs and the outputs. It could be in the middle, like the frosting in the middle of a cookie, because if you don't put your DNA, at least especially at the end, and you send it out to the world, shame on you. Then now AI
Yeah.
becomes the boss, BOSS, as opposed to an augmentation, an enabler of what it is that you want to do, and then ultimately what it is that you do. Make sure AI is always in the middle, not the start or at the finish.
Scott, so obviously from your bio to what you just shared now, you've mentioned sports, you've mentioned God, you've mentioned AI, you've mentioned tech, engineering. So I always like to get a sense for where my guests came from. So could you provide what your path has looked like to now, say from when you were going into whether it was college or the real world? What did that look like? And what did your path look like to now to get you to who we see before us today?
Yeah, thanks, John. Well, a lot, I'm a byproduct of my upbringing, like most of us, to a large degree. My dad and my family, for all intents and purposes, are engineers, and I was blessed to have been born in little Fort Wayne, Indiana. But my dad, to his credit, got a reputation and credentialed for being a mechanic that knows how to build, run, and scale companies, and more specifically, take challenging situations and make them better. So he worked for a big firm back in the day called International Harvester. They were the makers of trucks and trailers and the first SUVs. And so he got a reputation, rightfully so, for being a fixer. And we moved to London, to Paris, Madrid. I actually spent 14 of my formative grade school years in Europe.
Wow.
But I kind of rebelled against it, though, John. And I write about this in Level Up and some of my other books. My dad was, I love him, he's my hero, but he would push my buttons about how to hold my pen when doing my math. He's the guy who first taught me about compartmentalization and systemization. But I think I wanted to be a rebel with a cause and in Europe. So I actually went more into the design, the writing, the arts. My original degree was in broadcast communications and journalism. But then my senior year in college, I got offered a job to go work for a tech company back in '88, and I took it. And I couldn't spell tech, at all. In fact, I thought that would be the last thing I want to do. There was a silly commercial back in the day, technology work. It's work without getting your hands dirty. I was like, screw that. But I got into that world, and it really was at the advent of enterprise systems computing. So the big companies, Oracle, Microsoft, SAP, IBM, those are the guys I worked with. And basically that's been my career since then is tech. But it's fun because the internet came out and web design and websites. So now I was able to kind of groove on the artistry. I called it aesthetic technology. And that was a blast, man. I started my first company in '95 with IBM to basically bring e-business, e-commerce, what is our world now, right, into the world. And then I was also there during the advent of mobile technology and social technology. And that's where I wrote Co+Factor. It was a program I did with IBM. They asked me to lead this launch of a new product. I did 28 cities over 18 months. And that was cool. And now we're in the AI era, man. And it's a whole nother infusion of, yeah, I get it. Risk, uncertainty, fun factor. But I just encourage everybody, neither a cynic nor a optimist be. Practice positive pragmatism. And now
Yeah.
more than ever is how that's the habit and the mindset we got to take with AI.
So Scott, you going back to your dad, you said he had, corrected how you held your pencil or your pen, and then he's the one that taught you about compartmentalization and systems. So as a dad, I'm curious because there are lessons that I give my kids about where to apply their focus and how to use their energy, right? There's things that you and I learned coming up that it's great because we can now apply that thinking and help be thought partners for them. So for you, how did your dad convey to you the compartmentalization and the systems kind of mindset?
Well, in our world, we talk about the essential concepts, tools, and disciplines, and we try to keep it simple. So we don't require people to read a boatload of books. And if you look at our solution, it's very visual, a lot of pictures. We use video. Again, we encourage AI. But I can tell you, my dad has a handful of concepts that we embrace today. Put first things first. Control the controllables, right? And he just always had this positively pragmatic approach to dealing with work, life, and business. You with me? And I think one of the things that, because I was blessed to move around a lot, my family was key to me. I mean, I moved literally to 20 different locations over 20 years. It's just a fact. And that teaches you how to adapt and adopt for sure. I get classified as this entrepreneur, I don't think I've ever really invented anything new. I take things that exist and ideally get them to a better level. That's one of my purpose, causes, and passions for myself and for others. So I think what my dad taught me is some of the fundamental concepts that we can now use as parents. And that's why every time I kind of do my thing, I'm always business, work, and life. And that old silly thing, don't take it personal, it's business, that's bullshit. Especially today, post-COVID, hybrid workforce. Then you look at all the generations and the dynamics. It's embedded, man. And I know you know that, John. This hard line of, and you just can't do that. So I think I was blessed and privileged to grow up in a home and with the type of influence. Then in work, man, true story, I can only count on a couple of fingers how many people I reported to who I truly respected. And I think there's a lot of things you can learn through, bad leadership and people doing things you don't respect and like as much as you do if you do. And so, yeah, I would just say that the influence of almost Stoic type approaches to challenges and opportunities, and just that blend of head, heart, and soul, if that makes sense, has been an incredible inspiration. And I think we've kind of taken it to a new, more modern, accessible, inclusive, and affordable type of a solution. Old days, a lot of things we do now would take literally years and cost millions of bucks and, dozens of people on the team. We don't need to do it that way anymore. And so
Yeah.
I always like the line, you've probably heard it, don't throw the baby out the bathwater, right? There's some good things about the past. And yeah, I know systems get a bum rap these days because a lot of things going on in politics and society, but I just have to remind everybody, systems aren't naturally bad. People make them bad. And if you're frustrated at the concept of systems itself, then stay after class and let's talk about it.
You've mentioned faith. Where does that play into your history, your story? Is that based on your family? Did you find it further along the way? And how does that impact your work and your way of being?
Yeah, well, believe it or not, I thought I wanted to be a priest once upon a time. When I lived in
No
London, I was an
kidding.
altar boy, and Father Day was a very influential part of my life. In fact, I won't take off my coat and show you, but I joke I had a midlife crisis. And I didn't go buy a Porsche or do dumb things. I started a podcast 5 years ago and started getting tattoos, much to the chagrin of my dad because he's not a big tat guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, faith, one of mine is, I'm a big Holy Spirit person. I dig the Trinity. I went to a very intentional and very intense Christ Renews His Parish program about a decade ago that was very life-changing to me. I don't try to, I don't put the bumper sticker on the car or overemphasize it, but I think spirituality, because I love a lot of what some of the essence that can come out of Buddhism and Hinduism and Judaism, and there's a lot of quote unquote faith. I don't want to use the word religion because I know there's a lot of problems with religion, but if you don't have some degree of spirituality and faith, I think it's kind of a sadder way to go through the world. Because we talk a lot about trust and faith, and in our quote unquote business operating solution that we teach and coach and implement, it's the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule. We could put in 80% of very tangible things and report and manage and measure, but on average about 10, 15, 20% of what ultimately gets done, both from an input and output, we don't always see. And so the more good we are on it's like calling an audible as a quarterback in football, right? The reason why the best quarterbacks can call audibles to get back to the playbook, it's because they live by the playbook.
Yeah.
And that's where faith comes in. Faith that, hey, we've done what we could to set it up. So what I can't see is still getting done. And that's where we have concepts like trust but verify, and why we believe in meetings and have these check-ins. But faith and spirituality, John, is big. And it's got to be part of the quote-unquote solution. What do you think? I mean, you've talked about your current situation, your kids, your life, where you've been, what you're doing. Where's faith and spirituality in your world?
It's there. In terms of religion, I went to Catholic school from kindergarten to 7th grade, then went to public school. I go to church every once in a while. My family's religious, but not overly religious. I don't I don't know. I'm the same as you. I don't put the bumper sticker on there. I'm very open to other faiths and learning. I wouldn't call myself religious. I'd call myself more spiritual than religious. Uh, but yeah, it comes back to Christianity and Catholicism because that's how I was raised. And I remember being a kid looking at my religion book, reading about these stories, right? I was probably third, fourth grade in class with my religion book, and it was just impressive of somebody, Jesus's story. And it's one of service. So it doesn't have to be, oh, it has to be Christianity, but just those stories of helping others. So even though I'm not religious today, much of who I am today is based on just taking in those lessons as a young kid.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's the foundation for who I am today and how I serve others. Like I just can't understand not helping someone else.
Yeah.
I saw it modeled by my parents, by my father, how much he gave to other people, would help other people in need. So to me, between what I learned and yes, from religion as a kid
Yeah.
and what my parents modeled for me, it just goes without saying. It's in my blood. It's in my breath. It's just the life I breathe is
Yeah.
helping others wherever I can. So no regrets on that at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, to me, John, that's why, Father, Son, Holy Ghost, Amen. I'm a Holy Ghost. I'm the Holy Spirit because those are back to faith. That's that
Yeah.
innate presence and essence that is the conduit to ensure that, I often talk about the metaphor of building, running, scaling a great business is like building, running, and living in a great home. Right. First, you got to have the house, and the house has got the bricks, the mortar, the cement,
Yep.
the tangible things. Right. Think of that as the content, and then you've got the mortar, and bricks without mortar does not a house make. Ideally, the
Yeah.
house becomes a home thanks to humans,
Yeah.
and again, we're flawed, we're imperfect. Holy cow! Ask around. I've got a lot of work to do to be a better version of myself. So that's job security, by the way, John. and I would say, that's what we want. And again, I see a lot of people, especially today. Well, you're blessed, you're privileged, whatever. And I don't disagree with that at all. That's why I don't like some of the terms like pull yourself up with the bootstraps or just push meritocracy alone. It's more complicated and nuanced than that. But that said, I'm going to go a little David Goggins, own your shit.
Yeah.
And irrespective of this, that, and the other, I know it's easier said than done. I get it. But I'll tell you my
Absolutely.
story, man. I was almost bankrupt twice when I was a young schmuck and made too much and had a fancy sports car. I moved out to L.A. and had a job with a big tech company, and I got reduction forced in one of the recessions that happened. And man, it knocked me down hard, so hard I thought I didn't want to live on this planet anymore. I was basically loitering in an unpaid apartment with no heat or electricity, and I actually had an epiphany, very sincerely, back to the tap on the shoulder from the good Lord above. He said, "Get your shit together." And so I moved back to Indy. I had a job offer that made me have it. In fact, I just came home from out west of Colorado, and we drove from Breckenridge to the airport, and that's where I remember I stopped in my car. It took 3 hours out because I had to be back in Indy within 20 hours, and I got the job, but I actually lived in one of those shabby shack motels with the bed folded out of the wall for 3 months. Ate, PB&Js and mac and cheese and basically, leftover food from the commissary. But again, thanks to the influence of my dad and that I didn't want to disappoint people, I actually, believe it or not, I brought the Tony Robbins cassettes into my life, and I just said, "Hey, man, I'm going to boogie on this." And fortunately, knock on wood, luck is when preparation meets opportunity, and I was able to work my way out of the doldrums. And a couple of years later is when I started my first company back in '95.
Yeah, it's incredible when what just a little bit of advice, a word of advice, a word of encouragement, a kick in the ass can do for someone. And you got to wonder, it's like how many people that are of lesser means or haven't quite tapped into what they're meant for, haven't had that.
Yeah.
Because sometimes all it takes is just somebody reminding you, hey, no one's coming for you. You got to do it for yourself. Because I think we leave so much on the table because we're not prompted to. There's that word again, prompt.
Right.
We're not prompted for better. We're not prompted to really tap into who we are at our core. Scott, for you, so what was it? in each of the instances where you launched and founded your own companies, what was the prompt? What was the thinking for each of those? Or maybe not each, because I know you've started so many, but are there instances that stand out for you that provide great lessons for somebody about what it is you saw, what you were experiencing, how you were prompted again, that made you want to take that chance and start your own thing?
Well, I think the way that I looked at it before is different. I've evolved. I've grown. God knows I got a lot of maturing to do. I can be a very immature individual, he says with a wink.
Me too.
But, I hope you always got a little child in you that never really goes away, right, man? So I think there's, I've had inflection points, and I'm going to go back to just tech in general, right? The tech that came about through the internet, the tech that came about before the internet, when just, enterprise computing came into the workforce.
Yep.
Then obviously we had mobile technology that was just a major force, and then social, and now AI. So I think it's been both a push-pull, like most things in life. I think it's been I want to generate impact like everybody does, right? I want to be philanthropic. I want to serve. I want to be of service. Well, I hope most people do. And I do believe 95% of humanity on this planet truly does want to try to do their best and don't want conflict and fights and bombs and ugliness and all that isms going on. But that's still, several million people that are knuckleheads or sociopaths and psychopaths. And, so I would just say I always look through the lens of impact and income. And frankly, they got to be cohesive and together, right? I'm what I call a humanitarian capitalist. And I go back and say, hey, having been so much in tech, right, you can do impact and income. I even think values, for example, right? Values without performance is like pushing a wet noodle. I honestly can't respect it. Right.
Yeah.
And I'm going to give credit to Pat Lencioni, who's one of the forefathers of leadership and value setting. Right. And he actually has an acronym. He calls them SHIT values. And the SHIT values are service, honesty, integrity, and teamwork. And he's like, no shit. Of course, those should be incumbent. And if I got to sell that to you and make that part of our rally cry, come on now.
Yeah.
So I think that's where I try to look at, and in hindsight and currently, through the lens of impact and income. In fact, I teach what's called the Ben Franklin, right? Put a line on the board, and on the left, right impact, on the right income, and just make sure there's a correlation. This is why I get so frustrated with some startups sometimes. It's like they're romanticized by the startup. They're romanticized by being an entrepreneur. Well, I get it on the one level, but I'm going to go a little Jerry Maguire. Show me the money, right? And where and how do we generate cash flow and income? And if there's not this consistent boom, 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 right? Left hook, right hook, uppercut, go a little P90X here, right? Then go back to the drawing board. And so for me, we use a lot of what we call filters and the way that we view things, stages and phases, to be as scientific and artistic when it comes to building, running, scaling great companies and having great lives. And you just got to appreciate that duality of impact and income. And so that's the lens I work and live and believe in. And I look back in hindsight, maybe more serendipitously. I wasn't as structured and systemic before. I was lucky, thanks to my dad. I did a lot of things naturally. But for those that don't, get out of your own way. Check your ego and realize, to your point, for you have this podcast, other people have opinions. You may not like them, but you should at least listen to it. And there's a bunch of great frameworks out there that you can leverage. And there's a lot of things you can do if you just get out of your own damn way. And by the way, it's funny, John, you said what you said. So I still coach a lot of, people. And most of my one-on-one coaching, my clients know this. I start with, you ready? Hey, how you doing? You want a kick in the ass, a pat in the back, or a little bit of both? Because that's what we all need. Irrespective of your position, you need people in the world that are going to give you, and sure, a hug's good. No doubt about it, and a beer and a cup of coffee, but you got to be willing to challenge and be challenged and be anti-fragile, if you will. That word resiliency is a big word today, but you got to unpack that and say, well, how does that happen, and how do I get that done? So I wanted to compliment you on the kick in the shorts and the pat in the back, because that's a great approach.
Physically, if you picture somebody kicking somebody in the ass, okay, it seems physically, yes, violent.
Yeah.
Metaphorically, to me, it's respect. If you're doing it in the vein that we're talking about, if you don't help somebody hold themselves accountable, like, to me, that's you not respecting them. I think people should look for the best, tap into the best of each other, especially the way the things are going in the world right now. So many people say, there's nothing that I can impact at such a high level, at the national level, at the geopolitical level. Of course, I get that. There's only so much you can do. But what you can do is like what your dad said, what are the controllables? So what's your environment? What's your community? How are you helping build
Yeah.
the community that you have around you? So I love just that idea of holding people accountable for their own good,
Well,
not because you're trying to be condescending or
yeah,
overpowering, but to
yeah.
build the best out of people.
Yeah, so 100%. And so I'm just going to go back, sorry, hate to plug, but
That's all right. It's all
the
right.
40 moments are all around this conversation, John. And the whole idea is check yourself. What's your situation? Where are you? So to your point, moments in here around unification, adaptability, boundaries, alignment, courage, excuses, avoidance, harmony, poise, burnout, consequences. This is why I'm so passionate about this. It's because, especially with AI and tech and automation and social and all this instant gratification on the one hand, and I suck on the other. But how do I get it done? Right? What's the ABCs, the 1, 2, 3s? You with me?
Yeah.
And so again, through video, through lightweight insights and explanations, through 3 very specific gems, and then 5 prompts. Because at the end of the day, it's the old cliche of, do you want me to teach you to fish or give you to fish? Well,
Yeah.
depending on your situation, most people, I want both, because most things in this world are and both, not either or. And so
Yeah.
you're absolutely correct. I think, especially with AI in the world today, who we are as humans and the humanization of the systemization, man, it's like peanut butter and jelly. It's apple pie and ice cream. It goes together. And you just got to embrace that. And what's counterintuitive to a lot of people, John, Abraham Lincoln has a famous quote: If you ask me to chop down a tree for 7 hours, I'll spend 5 hours sharpening the axe.
Yeah.
And that's so counterintuitive to a lot of people, especially when you got the Nike ad, just do it. Well, just do it can get you in a lot of bloody problems and trouble. So I just, again, I caution and I encourage
Yeah.
preparation and readiness, and this duality of, head and heart, and purpose and profit, and systems and soul, and income and impact. And if you
Yeah.
go through life with that challenge, again, kick yourself in the butt. To your point, I am a fan of Goggins. I like the
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
discipline equals freedom, even though it actually was Bruce Lee who said it first. But like a lot of things in the world,
Of
there's only,
course.
5% of original ideas. Everything else is just manifested. But yeah, I think if you go through the world and then you have, again, humble heart to say, hey, there's other people who can help me, why not? Especially if it's, again, accessible, affordable. There's just too much available today. Even if you have valid excuses, you got to figure out how to overcome those.
Scott, a couple of minutes ago, you had mentioned it plays in the same vein that you've kind of played with of humanity and technology, but you had mentioned in technology, and you used the word artistic. So for you, can you speak to that a little bit more? What is it in you that drives that willingness to say artistic when it comes to something so, for this purpose, cold as technology?
Well, I think, even in sales, right? You don't sell the steak, you sell a sizzle, so to speak. And so the smell, the sight, the touch, the taste, the feel.
All right,
And
stop. You're killing me with that. Now you're making me hungry.
yeah, well, I am too, by the way. But so I think it, and I was, again, blessed to be in the world when the web came out, and we now were able to take this mainframe, green screen, 5250 asynchronous data, right? And if you think about computing, it's always kind of had 4 levels. First was data processing, and that was, black and white, X's and O's, Excel. Then we had information systems, and that's when we started to incorporate the web and the internet and had some UX, UI requirements. Then it became knowledge management. And now with AI, it ultimately gets to the next level, which is wisdom, because wisdom is where you take insight and you make it your foresight. And so I was there when we were able to transcend this boring, yucky mainframe, one-to-one computing into this beautifully designed, UX, UI. And so you look at the world today, so many of us are just almost spoiled. They don't have a different experience when,
Yeah.
even dated all the way back to SOSs and what do you call that?
Yep.
When we're
The
communicating
Morse
with
code.
smoke signals. And so, yeah, I think, it's, again, an and both. We need infrastructure. We need plumbing. We need HVAC, but you don't see that in the house, right? That's behind the quote unquote drywall or the firewall. But perception is reality, and you never get a second chance to make a first impression. So design and the importance of aesthetics. And again, I'm just going to go back to the two books. People are blown away. They're like, this isn't a book. It's like a story time. And I go, I know. And that's because I don't want to pander you, but I do want to engage you, right? That's why we call them systems of engagement, and the importance of, again, does it feel good? Does it invite me in? And that's something you should think about. You ready, man? In business, work, and life, right? It should not just be, well, I'm going to quarantine that to the office, or that's what the corporate guys do. No, man, we're humans. And most of us humans need production, but we also, right, wrong, or differently, we're heavily influenced by perception, AKA the artistry.
A couple minutes ago, you had also mentioned, because you and I we're playful. We just say what's on our mind. We're loose about how we kind of convey our things, our messages. So you mentioned the inner kid. My next question is always, does it make sense from your childhood that this is what you're doing? But even before that, or maybe it applies to that question, when you mention that inner kid, where does that awareness come in for you with regard to maintaining that inner kid mentality or vision or awe or wonder, whatever it may be? We've talked about religion. We've talked about creativity. We've talked about systemization. So when you think about that inner kid and this playfulness, obviously, that you have, just in the way that we banter back and forth, where does that come from in you?
Well, I think about, as humans, right? Let's give a little credit, but not too much, to Ted Lasso, and be curious, right? If you think about kids, they're curious. They're not. As we get older, we get absolutely influenced by the people we're around, our parents, our lineage, yes, our genre, our sex, our creed, our religion. But up until you're about, early teens, most of the kids don't see it that way. There's just another kid, irrespective of religion, skin color, gender, for the most part, right?
Yeah.
And I think that
Yeah.
goes back to just this natural, we are humans, a curiosity. That's why I'm such a big fan of Darwin. A lot of people get his theory wrong. They say it's survival of the strongest. No, it's not. It's survival of the fittest and adaptable. And in fact, in BOS-UP Moments, my favorite visual is the one on adaptability, where we have a picture of a giraffe. How did a giraffe become a giraffe, man? Right? It adapted into it because it said, hey, to live and to continue to go, I got to grow my neck so I can eat the fruit up here that others can't eat, and get these really cool long legs and kick the shit out of the lions that want to try to attack me, right? I mean, and we're animals, right? Just like
Yeah.
they are,
Oh,
we all
absolutely.
are. And so I go back to curiosity, John. I think do I like to have fun and joke and have a good time? Absolutely. But at the heart of that, I think, if you're curious, you're open-minded, but also, like kids do sometimes you just have to say, no, I'm no. And maybe that no is wrong. You don't know any better. But again, there's a word, and I write about this in Level Up, two little letters, N and O. Man, is it hard to send and receive no more often than not. So you combine curiosity with a responsibility to say no. Like a little kid who, in the grocery store wants the Captain Crunch, but you're only going to get the boring, shredded
Checks.
wheat.
Something. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where it comes from. And that's where I'm going to continue to keep that flame lit, man, is around that word curiosity and the willingness to, again, I have opinions like belly buttons. We all got them, especially when you look at the world today, man, where and how people receive their news, their influence. And that's one, again, my passion's almost activism today, is to say, hey, you gotta, in our world, I'm just going to say this, we have what we call frameworks and templates and principles. And one of them is the clear principle. And anytime you're in an important dialogue, even with yourself, commit to clear. And clear is the definition of the word itself. Let's be clear. Are we clear? Super clear. But it's also an acronym, and it stands for collaborative, logical, empathetic, authentic, and resilient. And if you put those front and center as the guardrails, the ground rules, what we call agreement-based commitments, to how you're going to start and end this discussion, man, counterintuitive to a lot of people, resiliency and logical and can you do all that? Yes. We don't look for perfection. We look for progress. But that in of itself can just make things so much better than they would be if you didn't have that kind of a guardrail upfront commitment. And to a lot of people, they're like, it sounds so unnatural, but we're family, we're friends, we love each other. Yeah, I know. And that's why you have to have good boundaries. And you have to have agreement-based commitments, because when you don't and things go loosey-goosey, next thing you know, you freak out and you take it really personally. You with me? And that's the challenge and the opportunity that most of us have today.
So continuing on that inner kid tangent, this question, does it make sense from your childhood or who you were as a kid that this is what you're doing today? Not that you knew you were going to end up here or planned for it, but in looking back, what is it you brought forward with you that resonates from your childhood and the work that you're doing?
Yeah,
I think you gave some great examples about the curiosity.
So I think, from my childhood, my mom was blessed to have a stay-at-home mom, even though she did a lot of cool things in her life to become smarter, better, and stenography and art and cooking. So she worked, and 4 kids in my family, and we moved around a lot. So it was an full-time job. But I think my dad's, by nature, he's a serious guy, but he loved to have a drink and a good time. He liked conversation. And I think that's what, without putting my finger on it, John, until you're asking these questions, right? By nature and by nurture, the inner child of me was always there with this appreciation of, again, engineering, mechanics, and artistry and design. And it's propelled me to where I am. And now as I've gotten older and I reflect and I journal, right? And I don't need to go see, I'm all for therapy, right? I do a lot of psychology and sociology in my work. And I've invested a lot of time in other coaches who have helped me be better at that. But I don't think you got to go on the couch and get Dr. Freud in your life to do this. You just got to, unpack it again and deconstruct maybe where you've been, where you're at. And I think the point of your question is great. Because, again, I hope most of us have a good influence, even if there's been bad and dark and ugly days. I get it. But most of that should be leveraging in our pursuit to, number one, always be growing, always be a kid at not just in heart, but in spirit, right? Knowing that you can become better, knowing that you've not arrived, knowing that you're not there yet. And so, I give credit to my mom and my dad. And I think as I really put it, on paper right now, it's definitely at the heart of both the work and the passion that I have in the world today.
When did you start journaling?
Oh, gosh. On and off, probably 20 years ago. My sister gave me a great book, The Art of Happiness by Epictetus. And that's when I really think the influence back to Stoicism was to pause and whether you meditate literally or metaphorically, right? Just be in the moment, shut up. And I know it may sound ironic, all the talking I'm doing to you today, but very truly, I do, even when I coach, I prefer to listen 80%, talk 20. I like to ask really good questions and prompts, but obviously on the show to share. Thanks for having me. But I really would say it's the journaling's been around for a while, but now I'm much more intentional. Off of my podcast that I had back in the day, we've got Moments of Momentum. They're basically prompts and questions to ask yourself, hey, what moments, past, present, and future, do you want to generate and power progress and goodness, whether that's, again, income or impact? And again, with AI today, counterintuitively, the ability to journal, and I do believe in pen and paper, this has been proven. And that's why in our work, we always use physical guidebooks and pen. We don't use technology in session, but we have technology as part of our solution, because it's been proven that for most humans, like literally 80%, when you learn and create and develop and build using pen and paper, on average, your performance in terms of the implementation, the acceleration, and the benefits go up about 20 to 25%. It's a fact. Mm-hmm. So again, especially as we get more tech and centric, journaling, reading, communicating, you just can't underemphasize it.
When I asked you about your dad and your upbringing, you had mentioned Stoic, and I never know if somebody's using it as, someone is Stoic and it ends there, or if they have knowledge, just even passing knowledge of the Stoic and the Stoic philosophy. So it sounds like you have gone in and have been curious about the philosophy itself. What's been your exposure to that, if any?
Yeah, and I'm going to try to be respectful. Obviously, recently, Ryan Holiday's kind of got a lot of accolades for his books. I find those to be a little commercial, in my opinion. With respect, I think and I don't begrudge it. I think it's a monetary play. Stoicism for me and being stoic is really, and one of my moments in here is poise. Okay, so it reminds me of poise and stoicism. Sometimes it's best just to shut up and listen and learn and be present, and be respectful. Again, I go back to both empathetic and logical. Just because somebody screams and yells what they're screaming and yelling doesn't make it right.
Yeah.
And so for me, stoicism is really a mindset. It's a heart set. It's a body set. And it's complementary to the physical tools and technology and application. So I go back to this whole concept of a brick home, right? Bricks are the literal, physical, the content, the tangible, and the mortar is the intangible, the essence, the vibe, the mood. And even though you may say, I can't control that or I don't set that, well, bullshit. You can control it inside yourself. So if those around you are screaming and losing their shit and getting all anxious and out of control,
yeah,
a team. And then back to Socrates, who we know was known as the Fly, versus Plato and Epictetus and all those other cool cats, right? He really was all about prompts. His whole world was question, 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 right? That's why he was known as the Fly, because he just kept flying around your head, bugging you until you either came to a conclusion that he may want, or you come to a conclusion that you didn't have because you took too quick. That's why I always say, be quick, but don't hurry, right? When you hurry, shit goes bump in the night. You stub your toe, you do dumb things. Just think about everybody listening. Think about when you learn something for the first time that you're good at, and learn about when you did it. Did you inevitably not, when you're nailing in the hammer, did you not hit your thumbnail, right? Did you not write something stupid? Did you not say something you wish you didn't say? Well, hopefully, ideally, you learn from that and you get better, right?
Yeah.
So again, I go back to Stoicism. It's that mindset. It's that awareness. It's that je ne sais quoi that complements the literal and the tangible.
Scott, for you, what do you consider your superpower?
I believe in humble confidence. I don't think people want arrogance or cockiness. I believe in humble confidence. And I've got pilots as friends. And they'll tell you only in the movies are the pilots supposedly thinking about 145 souls in the back of the plane. They're a little selfish to a degree because they're thinking about themselves. And if they land that plane, guess what? They get to go home and live and be with their family. Guess what happens to 145 people back there? If you ever looked in a cockpit of an airplane, they got enough on their plate already that, thinking, over a 3-hour flight every minute, every moment about the 145 souls back there, that's a byproduct of them being mindful of themselves. So I use that because I think it's this, John. It's today. My passion, my purpose, my income, my impact is trying to share and get some of the insights and the conversation you and I have today into the world. And some would say, yeah, whatever, right? And Mother Teresa famously said, and I quote, do good and people accuse you of, selfishness, and say what you should say, knowing that not everybody's going to buy it, right? And being the guy that I am today, I'm not a public figure per se, but I've been around the block. I've got a bit of a brand. And so, I also would tell you, to the listeners as to me, if you're thinking you're going to go through life with everybody liking you, then you're doing something wrong. Because you got to stand for things. You got to be willing to put your foot down a little bit. Again, ideally, you do so when you're right or right-ish, and you do so with the right reasons, right? But inevitably, man, there's a lot of people in the world that just don't want to grow, and they don't want to change, and they don't want to embrace the beauty of both conflict and cohesive collaboration, right? There's just some grumpies in the world, man.
Yeah.
And it's why in our sessions we have 5 little squishy toys that represent 5 realities that most people encounter. One is the elephant, little elephant representing the elephant in the room. Another one's a bull, don't be a bully, or I call bullshit. Another one's a horse, right? Don't beat a dead horse or lobby. Another one's a cow. Let's not let the sacred cow get the better of us. And the other one's a squirrel. Tangent alert. Look, squirrel, watch out for that. So my point is, you got to have a little fun, I think. And that's what I try to do is, I'm a teacher at heart, man. I'm a learner and a student at heart, but I will say I'm on a cause. I was kind of semi-retired a few years ago before I started BOS-UP. Straticos, and in Straticos, we basically built BOS-UP out of it. And now we've got 70 something coaches, soon to be 250 around the world. So yeah, I'm blessed to be in a place where I can combine my purpose and my passion, my income and my impact. And then try to also, back to the very first question you asked, how do I compartmentalize my life? I am at an age right now that I'm certainly not wanting to work as hard as I did before and bust my ass. But, doing this is my job, if you look at it, but it's also my hobby and my passion. And I know it's easy for me to say, and I'm blessed because there's some people who are like, hey man, I work at a retail store and I'm at the register. I get it. And I respect it. Be that as it may. It doesn't mean you can't grow and become the person you want to be. And by doing that through what I call planned serendipity, you can find yourself getting more opportunities to change both your job and your career and your direction. And so again, probably another conversation for another day, John, because I know this is a sensitive topic in this country about those that are blessed and privileged and those that aren't, and that they both can't come together. Frankly, I think through good systems and podcasts like yours, you actually can, but probably don't have enough time to go there today.
No, I'd love to have that conversation at some point. I think the conversations that we tend to hear are kind of one side or the other. This person can't do it. This person needs all the help in the world. There's no in between. There's no nuance. And that's what pisses me off about the world. My friend jokes about me always using the word nuance, but lack of nuance is what gets us in trouble. Some people don't want nuance. They're just going to stand, at their different poles, and they're just going to hold their pole. They're not going to go to the other side. They're not going to go to the equator halfway. They're not going to meet anybody anywhere. But those are the kind of conversations that you do have to have. Yeah. Where you kind of say, I totally understand what you're going through. Here are some options. Here are some opportunities. Here are some mindsets to consider. Again, sometimes people, they don't need, and it all depends on who we're talking about. They don't need the resources. Sometimes all they need is just that reminder of their own agency, and that they can kind of set their story up. They can lay out their story. They can write their story the way they want. Again, I'm not meaning to generalize it across everybody, but it's amazing what people will do for themselves if they're just reminded or prompted, hey, this is a possibility. Hey, have you considered this? Because so many people in those states don't have anybody in their life that says, hey, you don't have to be here. Let's go work on you and see what you can provide to others.
And to your credit, you've done a great job today of pulling out words and moments of what I've said. And I want to do the same with you with that word agency, because that's getting a lot of play today. And I have an opinion about that. And I do want to share this. But to your credit and to your point, we're blessed and privileged, whatever, no doubt about it, right? I think schools are not doing the job that they should do. And I hate absolutes. So it sounds like I just did it. But on average, I think we're being disappointed by higher ed in particular, but even K through 12 to a degree. And then that word agency, I get it. I like it, but I also think it can turn into pandering and patronizing and almost a little bit of what I'm going to call passive aggressive intimidation, because the word itself implies probably several different meanings to different people, and irrespective of what it means to you, what are you going to do about it, right? Is agency set by God? Is this a nature thing? Is this a situation thing? Is this just what it is? Because again, I'm going to go back to why I'm so passionate about systems and frameworks and concepts, tools, and disciplines, and coalescing between head and heart and soul and body and impact and income. If you don't have that when you figure out your definition of agency, you're just using it as a word. And that word can actually be weaponized on both sides. And we know this today, man. Two realities can be true at the same time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right? And so this is what we're back to Stoics, man. You and I are having a very Stoic time together today, right? We have a wonderful give and take. In fact, you've been probably too nice to me, but that's
there's still time. There's still time.
I hear you, but that's where I go back to. Somebody once said, I don't know who it was, you're supposed to have 3 or 4 people in your life. One that literally looks at you and says, I call bullshit. And you know when you're dealing with that Humpty Dumpty moment in life, right? Get them on the phone. The other one says, I just want to listen. Here's my shoulder. Here's a hug. How about a beer or coffee, right? The other one is you call them up at 2:00 in the morning and say, I got to pick you up. We're going somewhere. And they say, okay, I'll meet you out front. No questions asked, man. They're just your wingman. And then I think a fourth is really who could be your hero if you don't have one, right? Who can you aspire and see and believe in, even though you'll never meet them in your entire life? And I'm going to take this back to agency. You've got to have the ingredients, let alone a formulation. And ideally, all templates and formulations can be to a degree modified, unless we're talking about flying airplanes and conducting open heart surgery, right? I hate this. Here's a book and it says do X, Y, Z. You know, that might work for McDonald's as a franchise, but most of us aren't building, running, scaling businesses or lives that need that type of rigor. And even if you do, I'm going to go back to one of my favorite commercials when I first started in tech 35, 40 years ago. It was by a local a burger chain that made great milkshakes, and their big competitor was McDonald's. And I use this in talks today. And they had a TV commercial where it starts off with an assembly line of milkshakes being made. And you knew it was a dig on McD's, man. And the voiceover says, we agree their way is more efficient. And then the camera pans to a person scooping out ice cream in the vat, putting it in the silver container, another scoop, milk, chocolate syrup, blends it up, pours it into the glass, right? And then you see this person looking at the camera, these three great looking shakes, and she goes, but when was the last time you had a milkshake and said, that tastes efficient?
Yeah.
So
Little
the
things like
challenge
that.
back to agency in life is how do we make sure we do have that, but we also need to produce?
Oh yeah,
We
absolutely.
do need to deliver. We do need to respect the fact that I want to be philanthropic and social enterprise and save this. But if I can't pay my bills, and I've been here, man, when the lights get turned down and you're running away from the creditors, it's hard to get footing to do what it is that you want to do on impact because you haven't gotten your income ducks in a row.
Yeah.
Back to it's an end both world, right?
So, absolutely.
Yeah.
Scott, what does leadership mean to you? Before we jump into your book, what does leadership mean to you?
Well, I have this brand new solution and service that I launched on Monday called the Leadership Development Experience with Scott Abbott that ties in the Moments book. It's a tough question, honestly, John. I'm not escaping it. It's kind of like, which of my favorite kids? And I'd say, well, right now my dog is, but that's a fun story.
Yeah.
But, I think leadership starts first and foremost with almost everything we talked about today, but to size it up and consolidate and to get it pretty precise and concise, curiosity, humility, courage, personal accountability. And again, I'm going to go back to this incessant, I'm going to use the word demand. It sounds heavy. This incessant pursuit of both income and impact. And one of the definitions I've heard before is you can't consider or call yourself a leader unless you know tangibly that you've made 3 to 5 other leaders. So you could be an apprentice, you could be in pursuit of, but technically speaking, and this is not actually a government validated, reality, but I've heard it before. Look around, and that's why I'm respectful for young workers. Hey, you're just not there yet, right? It's such a powerful word, Y-E-T, yet. I'm not there yet. Yeah. But it doesn't mean you should either hide or run or think you're where you are when you shouldn't be. So again, I go back to what I just said. If people want to rewind those words, and again, I'm just going to say it, right? This podcast starts and ends and so on. But BOS-UP Moments is all about that. And it's complicated. To get there from here takes work. But I think in summary, it starts with those elements we just talked about. And really, I'll just sum up and say, if you can't appreciate the duality of impact and income, and that we need to embrace what we call the essential concepts, tools, and disciplines. And you can have all the heart and purpose and cause you want in the world, but you also got to know that you got to deliver, you got to produce, you got to make payroll for you and others. And those are responsibilities, and you got to be accountable to those.
Yeah. Scott, so we're jumping into the book. Why don't you introduce the book, and if you could speak to how the book came to be? What was it that prompted you or triggered you to writing it?
Well, first and foremost, I want to give you credit. While your name might be John Jaramillo, you are representing, in my opinion, the right approach to learning how to be a leader and to get to the next level, right? Listen, learn, shut up, look around. And I know it may sound ironic today because I've done 90% of the dialogue, but this has been a decade-long project. BOS-UP Blue, the first book, the engineering, the mechanics. I'm not going to lie. I've read so many wonderful books from so many authors. I've worked with so many coaches and consultancies and influencers. I wrote that pretty quick. It took me about 6 months. In fact, the design is what took as long. I've got a design team around the world that helped bring this together. So it's fun. It's got assessments. It's kind of cool. Moments has been in my mind forever. In fact, I look back at some of my blogs and my writings, my earlier books, and so this scratch has been an itch. This has been an itch that I haven't been able to scratch completely. And so I started writing because there's 40 moments. I'm actually almost done with volume 2. So volume 1 is called Catalyst, and volume 2 is called Advantage. Volume 2 will have 40 moments. And in fact, I'm more psyched about volume 2 because it actually goes to almost a more deeper level, back to Stoics and philosophy.
Okay.
This is called Catalyst because the first 7 are very intentional. Moment 1, 2, and 3 is what's called builder, architect, and custodian. And I think that's how you need to think about yourself, whether you're a leader now or you want to be. You need to build, you need to architect, build, and be a custodian. And then the next 4 are kind of your typical, what you need to know as a leader, a manager, a team member, and somebody who's accountable. And then from there, it's more around, again, the EQ, setting good boundaries, overcoming conflict, how to bring more courage, how to overcome anxiety, right? Those intangibles that connect the tissue between the tools and back to that word agency. And that's where I really think we've got some wonderful material in there. I also did videos for every one of them. So they all tie, each moment has got a QR code. And what's kind of cool is you could use you can be completely lazy and just click on the QR code and then you get me in video. So I wait a minute. You say you have AI and videos and all this is in a book?
Yeah.
But they're workarounds because it's a QR code. So I've recorded 80 videos already, man. Been doing that for a while. And then back to the journaling, just a fan of it all. So everything is it's a framework. It's fun. Everything has like an initial paragraph that says, hey, but where I really have fun with people, and this is where the new leadership development experience starts. I do a keynote. Everybody gets a book. And then when we have time, I say, all right, think about where you're at in your life, your situation, your goals, your objectives, your challenges, your opportunities, and just go over the 40 words. Or if you want, you go to the back of the book and there's a beautiful glossary that sums up what it is. But I prefer you to start here and just use your spidey sense, your sixth sense, say, hey, what resonates with you about that one word? And then tell me what it is. Well, I like courage. Well, why do you like courage? Well, I'm a little frustrated right now. I got a bit of imposter syndrome and I think I'm faking it to make it. And I just need to be more confident. Okay, great. Well, do me a favor. So let's just say, what page is courage on? Courage is on page 103. So go to page 103. And this is actually the top of the book says there's magic in these pages, and I'll show you the magic. And they'll inevitably say to me, their explanation is say, now go to that page and read it. And they'll pick it up and they read this out loud. Courage, fear, uncertainty, and doubt are constants in business and life, yet right alongside them lives something equally powerful, courage. Courage isn't the absence of FUD. It's the decision to move forward anyway. It's the steady discipline to persevere and keep showing up authentically, even when the moment feels risky or uncomfortable. How did you know that's how I felt? Well, I didn't know. It's just a general assumption because you're not the first person to feel this way. Get over yourself.
Yeah.
And then to get a quick QR code, gems, brief explanation, and then the prompts. The whole thing here, man, is, and you've heard this before, what's the line? Tell me and I hear you. Teach me and I remember. Include me and I get it.
Yeah.
And that's the concept here, man. Because this is all 40. So, so I've now got people using this for their L&D. I've got people putting it on their nightstand, their boardroom. And that's what, if I could say with humble pride, this is kind of taken off pretty big, and I'm excited by it fact, we're doing deals with colleges right now and faith-based organizations and not-for-profits because, the book might cost $35 because it's expensive. These are beautiful pictures,
Oh yeah,
field
absolutely.
guide, right? But this is now a way that I think, again, we help people through a modern, accessible, affordable, actionable approach to just be more, you know, all the things we've already talked about. You follow me? So that's the
Yeah.
big thing. The book. Thanks for asking. And now the new. I'm doing almost a kind of a tour. I've been on this kind of virtual tour for 90 days, and now the physical one starts with the new Lead with Scott. Leadwithscott.com. You can find all about it. And I'm excited. I'm not a professional speaker, man. This isn't what I do for a living. But I got a purpose, cause, passion. Yeah, you know what? I'm going to use a word that maybe I didn't use earlier when you asked about faith and spirituality. I do believe there's ministry here. And if some people want to take that the wrong way, I
What are you
understand.
gonna do? What are
But
you gonna
I
do?
but I think I've got a bit of ministry here, if I can say with humble heart. And as Mother Teresa said, if you do and you don't do something about it, then that's actually being arrogant and selfish. And I don't want
Yeah.
Mother Teresa mad at me.
Scott, I jotted down before you had said semi-retired. So what was it that prompted you to get back in the game? Like if you're
This man,
semi-retired, because what you're doing today is what most people would do for their career. It's like the
yeah.
main thing that they're doing. This seems like the main act in your later chapters. So what was it that pulled you out of semi-retirement? What was that? Was there a key moment, conversation? What was it?
Well, John, if you didn't notice, I think I just blushed a little bit. I don't know why. Thanks, man. You're good at this. And I've heard your other shows, but I appreciate you on a lot of levels. So this, I think AI in particular, socioeconomics, the unification and the divisiveness that's going on in our world today. I don't claim to have all the answers, man. I just turned 60 not too long ago, but I still remember got a lot of growing up, and I'm an incredible immature guy at times. Um, but I feel compelled, and back to my faith too. I feel like I've done some things I'm not proud of. I've made some mistakes. I hate the expression "pay it forward," but I think there's an essence there that's important for all of us. My dad taught me that true philanthropists don't, put their names on buildings when they donate or they tithe or they give, and I do that, by the way, and my one brother and I, especially through COVID, would always tip, a lot more than you should just because we were sensitive to the situation. And I think all that's good when you can throw a buck here or do some monetary here, but when you put your body, heart, and soul into something, man, the old cliche about the chicken and the egg, or the chicken and the pig. But yeah, I'm passionate about this. I think we've got some challenges. I think the next decade, and I don't want to be doing this for a decade, so I practice what I preach. I've got a 3-year plan.
Okay.
I have a bit of a BHAG, as Collins would call it, or a compelling, audacious goal that I'm going to pass on to my team and to others, because I can't be everywhere at once. But again, thanks to video and podcasts and books, I could be in more places than I could if it was just me. So yeah, I'm just passionate about the purpose, cause, passion to unite and unify people with good leadership and take inanimate systems and make them tailored to be your way of doing things versus what the book says you're supposed to do. And I think, there's not a lot of apples to apples others doing the same thing. I mean, there's a lot of really good talkers and thinkers and writers and authors and leaders out there in the world. But again, I've been blessed that I can invest and afford to do some things that are more of the, I can't connect dots on the P&L, and that's okay. That's not what this is about for me right now, although I encourage everybody else better, especially if you're running
Yeah.
a company that you got to pay bills and salaries and expenses. So yeah, it's really been, especially on the AI and some of the things going on socioeconomically, to sum it up. It just has said, hey, I got some more game. I never plan to retire, like the old man, the rocking chair, man. That ain't gonna ever be my thing.
Yeah.
You ain't growing, you're
I get
dying,
that.
man. So I
I
hope to be
get
doing
that.
stuff like my dad. My dad just turned 98 and he's
God
still
bless
active,
him.
right?
God bless him.
Yeah.
Scott, for you, so when did you start? When did this kind of seed get planted to write this book?
I'm sorry,
What
by
year
the way, my
was it?
dad just turned 88, not 98. I'm
Okay,
80 now, but
still,
I
God
got a
bless
little
him.
dyslexia that happens every now and then. I
That's all
think
right. That's all right. Yeah. So when around what time did you start thinking about writing this book? Well, really getting to it.
Oh, I've had a passion around business and systems and leadership for a long time. And in fact, my first book, Level Up, is really geared towards young adults entering the workforce. In fact, I call
Okay.
it career-centric life skills. And then Co+Factor was really a deal I did with IBM. It's a fun, simple little book that talks about systems of engagement and social enterprises and so on and so forth. So I've had this passion, and again, there's phenomenal authors out there: Collins, Drucker, Deming, the new authors, Brene Brown, Sanborn, and again, I've been influenced by a lot of people. You can see it on my website. I used to have a studio, and I've got tens of thousands of dollars worth of books and academic materials, and invested in training and certification myself. But I'd say probably the last 10 years, the BOS-UP as it's today, the BOS-UP
Yeah.
Coaching Solution and Academy, where we provide materials and resources and support for our independent members that are doing whatever they're doing in the world, and they tuck in our materials to help them generate impact and income. That's been about a 10-year journey. Technically, from an incorporation standpoint, BOS-UP was launched 3.5 years ago. And we have beautiful materials, resources, guidebooks, training and learning. But then I wrote BOS-UP the first, and then really, man, the passion, and I'm excited about it. And in fact, I'm going to go on the record, John, and I don't know how many listeners you are, but I've been doing this lately, and it could get me into trouble, but I haven't gotten into trouble yet. When I launched BOS-UP Moments, this sounds maybe a little less humble than I want, but I said, hey, if you genuinely get the book and you give it the right amount of time, and it goes from, again, the office, the boardroom, the kitchen table, the nightstand, and ideally maybe you'll spill a little mustard on it while you're eating your sandwich, or a little coffee stain over here. Make it what it's supposed to do, and you give it 30, 60 days, and you say, this is not one of my top 10 favorite that I have in my life. Send me a note and I'll send you a couple $100. Promise. By the way, John, I put this online, and I said this in a couple of speeches, and I've yet to have anybody get back to me. Now, I had somebody fun the other day in one of the sessions I was in say, hey, Abbott, by the way, I don't think this is number 10. And I was like, hey, I see what you're doing there. He goes, no, not really. I read your book before I came in the room today. So, but
Yeah.
he reminded me about the challenge I made, right?
The challenge.
Yeah. So yeah, I would just say, hey, everybody, I'm keeping that light on, the porch light on the challenge. And
Yeah. I
as
mean,
long as you
that's
do
a
your part
commitment.
and I do my part back to retirement, I'm not going to set a date. I do have a 3-year plan. I do have numbers. I do have OKRs. I do have KPIs, right? I practice what I preach. My
Yeah.
team runs on what it is that we help other people do. But I often say this all the time, right? Leadership is not in the title. It's not anointed. I was with a Fortune 135, $30 billion company, and one of the board members gave us a talk, and she said, and I quote, gentlemen, remember, you do not own these seats. You are planting seeds under which the shade of the trees you shall not sit again, right? You are in service to others. They're not in service to you. And it's always been something I've never forgotten about. So you've heard of things like servant leadership, right? And
Yeah.
inverted pyramid and all those things. Well, conceptually they sound good, but how do you do it and get it done? And so I think that's part of the current focus right now, is help others be their best version, knowing that certainly, don't just look to me because I'm imperfect and flawed in many ways. But if we all just sort of groove on, again, some of these essential concepts, tools, and disciplines, and come together to try to be our best, good things are going to happen.
Scott, I'm always curious for any authors that I have on here. Obviously, they're the specialists for what they're writing. They're the experts, the go-to, right? The foremost thinkers on their subject matter. For you, even though that's the case, even though your life's work is infused in these pages, during the process of writing the book, aside from the chaos of putting such a beautiful book together, right? What changed in you? These are lessons that you've known, that you're committing to paper, but what evolved in you from going through this book, putting it together? Did anything change in your thinking, sharpen, redefine itself? What changed, if anything at all?
Dude, you're rocking the Q&A, and I know a lot of people say, hey, great question. It's like, what'd you have for lunch? But really, you're beautiful. So again, I'm going to be vulnerable because I asked for vulnerability and authenticity in leadership. Through the teamwork of writing BOS-UP and in particular BOS-UP Moments, And I always preach humble confidence, right? If you know you've got a superpower, you're good at something, don't be overly bashful or shy about it, right? Say, yeah, I'm good at this. I'm not perfect, right? But I go back to Kurt Signetti and the coach of the Hoosiers, right? We're going to win. Well, that's kind of brash and bold. Well, there's a time and a place to say we're going to win, right? Why go on the field without the intent of winning? So this is where I'm going to call bullshit even on myself, back to Mother Teresa. I thought it was a good book, Moments. I think BOS-UP is a good book too. But the more I did it, and again, I had a design team and I had people who challenged me on my thought process and my vernacular. And, I probably had a dozen individuals in particular who are like, yeah, what about this? What about that? When it finished, I'm just going to say it. Damn, this is pretty cool. And then guess what happened that I had no control over? The Mother Nature, right? You want to make God laugh? Tell him your plans. Then we started getting what I kind of knew was going to happen with AI, the workforce redeployments. I didn't know about wars and civility or lack thereof that was happening, but we got a lot of rock'em sock'em robots going on right now, man, right? And so to say I want to lead or be a leader or be in leadership is one thing. How am I going to do it? And let's be honest, the world does want, on average, more instant gratification. We can't afford to go off to the hallowed halls of academia. We have jobs to do that may just pay minimum wage. Okay. We have this thing called AI that's both a disruptor and an enabler. Okay. And again, I just felt that my blessings and my privilege needed to be applied other than just I wrote a book and sort of sat back and saw what it did. So that's what it did for me, man. It said, hey, if I took off my jacket, right, I even kind of started working out differently, my health, my rigor. I say this to a lot of owners, right? It's not selfish to be healthy and to take care of yourself, right? In fact, it's selfless because you know what's worse in this world than dying on the job? Getting disabled and handicapped and having a stroke or putting yourself in a mess that you start taking up bad vices, right? Because now you're a triple liability. If you die, you're gone. And you don't technically care because you're not here. You may emotionally and spiritually care, but now you're leaving all these people. So I challenge every business out there. I have a fun little way when I do my keynotes. Who in this room is using, leveraging, and employing a literal business operating system to help you build, run, and scale your company? And on average, 10, 15 people put their hands up. I say, okay, those that didn't, put your hands back up. Because no system's a system. Because a lot of people go, what is a BOS? I go, you want to know what the answer is? It's a system to help you operate your business. Do you have one? No. So if something goes bump in the night, what happens to those around you? They're left hanging, man. Yeah. Do you have insurance? Do you put on a seatbelt? Do you brush and floss? Come on, you call yourself a leader and you want to build a legacy, or now you're just being a selfish jerk and you just want to make money. Which is it? So if you didn't know, I'm a challenger. If you know anything about anything. So yeah, I would just say, man, what it did to me, John, is this. I mean, you're my 40th podcast in the last 60 days. So, I invested in a team. I'm putting my money where my mouth is, kind of a thing. And I said, hey, this needs to be more than just a book on a shelf. And that was always the intent. And so I think BOS-UP in general, and you can see on our socials, we're doing deals with schools, with big companies, with small. It's kind of cool. But Moments and the new leadership development experience is I'm just psyched about it because it allows me, instead of I could go in, I could do a keynote, I spend a day with the company, and then basically it's that classic give a fish, teach a fish, and you take it from there. And it just allows me to be in more places at once. And it's just really influenced me to say, all right, it's more than just the ego side of having a bestseller or being an author. It's now the do it side. And that's what happened through the production, not the writing, because the writing was kind of there, but the production, the team, and as many people as I've heard and seen who said, hey, I like, I'm just going to say this, James Clear, Atomic Habits. I like the book. But when I look around, I go, 10 million copies of Atomic Habits? And I'm sorry, I'm just going to say this, and I'm being humble but candid. I'd ask anybody to put these side by side and say, which one's going to be more strategic and tactical to help you realize that we don't rise to level our goals, we fall to level our habits, as James says. I agree with it. But I just think I'm trying to not pander or appeal to a world that's, impatient, right? But again, the fusion of AI and video and written word and fun visualization. Come on, I go back to my challenge. If you don't think this is top 10, I didn't say number one, by the way.
Yeah.
Then so yeah, man, I feel like if I'm going to say it, I've got to do something about it. And
Oh,
that's what
absolutely.
happened in
No,
the
I
process,
appreciate
putting
that
the book
too.
in the world. To answer your question specifically.
Absolutely. So I got you for about 3 minutes, but 2 questions I want to ask. We'll go through them quickly. What book has inspired or made an impact on you?
Well, I'm going to go back. My sister gave it to me for graduation, and that's when I was thinking that I was going to be more of a writer and an artist and in the field of journalism and broadcasting. And it was Epictetus, the Art of Happiness.
Art of Happiness.
And what's kind of cool is like this, there's 50 little mini stories in there. You follow me? It's a small little book. It fits in the backpack.
Yeah.
And I've literally bought 400 or 500 copies of that, and I've given out as a gift for 40 years of my life. So in addition to that, I would say again, Jim Collins, Good to Great, Built to Last. More recently, there's been a handful of writers, Vern Harnish, who wrote Scaling Up, Gino Wickman, who wrote Traction, Michael Gerber, who wrote E-Myth, Jack Stack, Great Game of Business. Those have been very influential to BOS-UP. Credit where credit is due. Drucker, Deming, Porter, the guys that invented lean, right? And those kind of things. And then recently I'm a big fan of, authors like Brene Brown and Kim Sanborn. And again, I'll give credit to James Clear, a new book by Jeff Wood, The AI-Driven Leader. But you know what, man, I'm going to end this by saying I love books, but you know what I love more? Movies. And dude, I'm not kidding. This may be TMI, but my brain doesn't shut off even when I'm sleeping. In fact, my dreams are wicked on work and life. But when I watch a movie, man, it's like catnip. I'm not, ask my family, ask around, right? And so when I turn on a movie, I'm like Homer Simpson. I got a little slobber coming out of my face because I don't know if I'm just watching it. It's a visual, but movie is my gig. And I often talk about the influence of movies like The Martian, which is a great movie for every business leader. In fact, I used to do a fun talk that started with the trailer of The Martian and ended with the trailer of Moneyball. And the theme is, to Matt Damon's credit on Martian, he figures out how to get the heck off the planet. Sorry for giving away the punchline, everybody, but he figured that's probably it. And then I
mean, the statute of limitations on watching that movie. If you haven't watched it by
if you haven't already, right?
Yeah.
And then Moneyball, right? The classic, hey, if we make you with this team, we'll have changed the game. And he did, right? They used analytics and systems and structure and protocol for what was typically, but he looks like Fabio. And why doesn't his girlfriend like him? What the fuck is that all about, right? You follow me? So those are my bookends to explain, hey, you got a lot of shit you're dealing with. How do you compartmentalize it and get it done, right? And then if you do it right, you could take C players and make them B plus and A players and all that Collins, Covey, Lencioni type of stuff. So yeah, I think movies are key, man. And they're not only fun to watch and enjoyable, and they can kind of shut down your brain, but inevitably there's a gem or a nugget or two in there, as well as music that can help you get from here to there.
All right, real quick, what's your go-to music or genre?
Everything, man. I was blessed to grow up in a home. So today I can't lie. I'm really into modern country, which is kind of ironic living here in Indiana. But I'll do it all. Blues, jazz, opera, orchestra. I'm not kidding. You look at my playlist.
That's awesome.
In fact, I'm kind of a great guy for Spotify because I literally will put in, this is my mood, this is my vibe, give me a playlist that fits me where I'm going. And it'll do all that. I'm listening to some new country. Next thing you know, I got some Bach. Yeah, and then we're doing some 80s rock and roll. and
glam rock.
Next one is I hear a Wham song. I mean, that's all cool, man.
Yeah. All right, Scott, wrapping up. What do you want to share before we go? The floor is yours. I know I got to get you off in like a minute. Obviously, you have a big launch that's taken place. Anything you want to share again or that you haven't shared at all? Floor is yours.
Yeah. First of all, John, talk about serendipity. Thanks, man. Thanks for being a host.
Anytime,
well done. And as a guy who I ended with 90 shows and I put a lot into my podcast, it's on hiatus officially. I don't know if I'll ever come back to it, but I sort of keep that, that hanging chat out there, if you do the expression. But
Yeah.
thank you for what you're doing, why you're doing it, because I know your head and heart's in this. We all know the economics of podcasts, like books per se. It ain't about that.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
I would just say again, yeah, I'm going to go back and say this would be disingenuous if I didn't say that, hey, I think Moments is a great book. Don't just take my word for it. Back to my bet. I think the new initiative, the leadership development experience, it's the time is now. If you go to the site, Lead with Scott, just do me a favor, spend 10 minutes because that's as much time as you need. And if that doesn't resonate, given what's going on in the world today, you might not be a human. I'm just going to say it that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
And then really more important, John, and I would just ask that people can either, believe me or not, to your credit and to this conversation, maybe there's a gem, maybe there's a nugget, maybe there's a concept, tool, or discipline that you're going to take away from. But if you're listening, to your credit, you're better than about 75% of the people that are out there. Because I think the world is kind of getting to a place. There's an old story about the two guys running through the woods being chased by a bear.
Yeah.
And the one guy stops to tie up his shoes because he knows there's going to be a run and a journey. And the other guy says, you ain't going to outrun that bear. He goes, hey, man, I don't got to outrun that bear. I got to outrun you. And that might sound a little callous, but again, I get that you can't, there's no I in team, but you can't spell team without an M and an E. And I know I may come off a little bit like Fred Rogers here, but you really do. And if you're listening to your podcast, I know people get this already. So to your credit. So don't be overly bashful about your superpowers. Don't be overly bashful that you want to succeed and be good and you want to generate impact and income. And to do that, you've got to grow.
Yeah.
And don't be sensitive to either, things like imposter syndrome. No shit. I've never did this podcast with you before, so I didn't know what I didn't know, right? But venture, move forward. And again, back to leadership, find that groove between, back to clear, collaboration, logical empathy, authenticity, and resiliency. Because here's my promise to everybody. And this might be overly speaking because I'm not God. But I will tell you this about AI. Yes, the reality is there will be millions and millions of current jobs that are no longer going to be current in the future. So you have choices to make. I believe trades and industrial sector, buildings and supplies and roofing and plumbing and high voltage electricity and making things better, back to custodianship, we're gonna have a renaissance there. Healthcare and hospitality, believe it or not, renaissance there. Yeah, if you're a mid-level, quote unquote, white collar, sitting at a desk pumping around a bunch of data and stuff. You might need to think differently, but use this as a stepping stone, a building block, not a stumbling block. And I'm going to go a little Dave Ramsey here. You got to figure out how to tighten your personal P&L probably. You got to figure out how to make some challenges probably. But look at this as and I'm just going to sum up by this, right? Say to yourself, I get to versus I have to. And if they say it takes about 28 to 35 days to start or stop one habit, depending on its size and maturity. Then it takes about 90 days to the next level. Then the other ones are more vice-like, and you really do need some therapy or some pharmaceuticals. But I think the 28 to 35 day, if you say to yourself every day, I get to versus I have to, it's a powerful concept that you can embrace. And then again, back to hopefully the materials in our dialogue today, there is a practical way to get there. You don't just have to fly blind, right? Be humble enough to say other people can help me get there. And then last but not least, no shit, do it. Get it done.
Yeah. And again, Scott shared his book, BOS-UP Moments, Volume 1, Catalyst, Field Guide to Prosper in Business, Work, and Life. Scott, thank you for all the nuggets you dropped over the last hour and a half. We covered a lot of ground, different areas of leadership, life, your journey. And each one of them could be their own episode. So I appreciate you so much for being here and sharing all of what you did.
Thanks, John. I appreciate you. I'm thankful for what you're doing and will continue to do and the hospitality you provided myself and your listeners today. So cheers.
The honor is mine, my friend. And if there's anything that I might have missed, there's so much to cover. I like to drag my guests down tangents, as you know. If there's anything at all you're curious about, let me know and I'll reach out to Scott, see what kind of information, guidance, wisdom, any additional of any of that I can get back from him. In the meantime, thank you for watching, listening, and subscribing, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye.